if you see folks coming in, this is like church. Everybody moves immediately to the back. My name is Ron Cosgrove, and I'm a chaplain at the University of Colorado Hospital. I specialize in palliative care. And for those of you who don't know what that means, palliative care is a specialty service, and it literally means, from the Greek translation, to come alongside. And that's very much the role that we took with Bruce and with Susan, to come alongside of them. And what a gift that has been for all of us. I'll share a very brief story. I work palliative care, unlike other practices medically. We work in a team, an interdisciplinary team with the doctor, advanced practice nurses, social workers, chaplains, psychologists, and so on. And every morning when we would get there, our schedules pop up on our computers. And whenever we would see Zander at the top of the list, we would look at each other with that look of, oh, good, fun people today. And it was from the get-go a gift to know Susan. Why don't we start with a moment of prayer, however you choose to express that. Heavenly Host, we come together in our sadness and in our joy, in our coming in and our going out, and in our welcome and in our release. We all come to you humbly with gratitude for the life that we have come to celebrate today. Thank you for Susan. Thank you for this company. If there be only one prayer, Lord, let it be, thank you. Amen.
To hear your warning cry, I'll be there when you are old. I rejoiced the day you were baptized to see your life unfold. I was there when you were but a child, with a faith to suit you well. In a blaze of light you wandered on to find where demons dwell. When you heard the wonder of the word, I was there to cheer you on. You were raised to praise the living Lord, to whom you now belong. If you find someone to share your time, and you join your hearts as one, I'll be there to make your verses rhyme from dusk till rising sun. In the Middle Ages of your life, not too old, no longer young, I'll be there to guide you through the night, complete what I've begun. When the evening gently closes in, and you shut your weary eyes, I'll be there as I have always been, with just one more surprise. I was there to hear your warning cry, I'll be there when you are old. I rejoiced the day you were baptized to see your life unfold.
Our first scripture reading, Psalm 14, 1 through 10. God is our refuge. God is our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose stream made glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at the break of day.
For the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. For the beauty of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale, and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. For the joy of human love, brother, sister, parent, child, friends on earth and friends above, for all gentle thoughts and love, for all gentle thoughts and love. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise.
Thank you, Brenda. Beautiful. For our second Bible reading, Romans 8:35 through 39. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble, hardship, persecution, famine, nakedness, or danger of the sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is Jesus Christ, our Lord. I probably know Susan less than everybody in this room. And I couldn't wait to see her every time her name was on that list I told you about earlier. It will come then as no surprise to you that I have a list. Boys, keep your dad busy. All the rest of you, watch on my boys and keep Bruce busy. And one sad note today, Aunt Sue's rolls will not be served. In my work, we deal with people day in and day out with chronic illness. It's a family disease, always. And it comes, I'm sure, as no surprise to each one of you, the vigor, compassion, sight, both for and in, that Bruce and Susan walked this time together with us and with all of you. It's an unusual circumstance for me to talk about how grateful I am for meeting my patients publicly, because they say in my line of work that you get the patients you need. Susan came into my life at a very dark time, and she reminded me that it is easy to be seen, but to be heard and held and attended to openly, brightly, with consummate focus is a gift that is given to not very many. And she reminded me that that is my job. That is in part my gift. She carried us in that little room often, directing conversation, directing emotion, and lifting all of us to her level of how this was going to be done. Clearly. No commas. Full stops only. And so with that, I'd like to turn this over to Lori.
Let's do this. Kleenex here, glasses on. Thanks for your patience. Maybe I'll just hold it. When I look around this room, I appreciate the impact Susan had on our lives. That is what makes finding the right words to express what she meant to each of us so very difficult. Gloria Vanderbilt said, "We are not put on this earth to see through one another. We are put on this earth to see one another through." That is exactly what Susan would have wanted, for us to see each other through. Susan treated friends like family and family like friends. Many of her gatherings included family and friends intermingling. She had a knack for bringing those she cared about together. She gave each of us the gift of time. She made time to be a part of your life. Susan locally sourced her friends and family. She saw what made you uniquely you and acknowledged how special that was. She trusted you to be the expert, whether it was a travel agent, teacher, gardener, artist, be patient here, welder, photographer, car mechanic, skier, yoga instructor, cement layer, vocalist, animal expert, remodeler of houses, physical therapist, hiker, biker, caterer, the list goes on and on. She would support you, encourage you, hire you, or get you in touch with one another. Susan understood that helping and being there for one another is the best way to go through life. Susan's talents seemed endless. Flowers. She is one of the few people I know who can take a thing of beauty found in nature, plant it in her garden, container pots, or arrange it in a vase and make it more breathtakingly beautiful. How does someone rearrange nature while still letting its natural beauty be seen? Susan could. Cooking. How to choose those yummy cookies, brownies, pies, the home-cooked meals, the sweet and the savory. She had it covered. This past Christmas, she had a cookie exchange for family members. She outdid herself with traditional favorites. Let's just say ours paled a bit in comparison to hers. And this from someone who said she preferred cooking to baking. But nothing in our minds can beat her homemade rolls. No family gathering was complete without them. None of her nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews will admit who holds the record for the most consumed. Sometimes she even made them into cinnamon rolls. Bruce said when he helped her make them for Thanksgiving this year, she put her arms around him, showing him how to knead them, just so. Entertaining. Maybe this love started with her catering days at CSU with her good friend. Wherever it started, she embraced this gift throughout her life. Zander's Winter Chalet was just one of similar gatherings. I think there was an international food one where Asian, Greek, Mexican, Italian, Indian. Anyway, friends and family were invited to the Zander's home to enjoy a wonderland of delicious food. You could choose from 5 different dining experiences, and you would be seated in areas throughout their home with 6 to 8 other people. Some diners would be enjoying perhaps ciappino, others fried chicken, some roasted lamb, even Louisiana shrimp boil, followed by a cookie and coffee bar and a game of Name That Tune, put together by Bruce, with creative prizes. Most of us would have a difficult time having a dinner party with one main dish for that many people. Susan and Bruce were a team, working together seamlessly. When her mother was in assisted living, Susan worked in the volunteer gift shop where she recruited friends to help. She would also host get-togethers at her home for the residents, Christmas dinner parties, garden parties with appetizers and happy hour. So joyful they were to be treated with such dignity. The VW party ode to a 68 bug. People dressed in 60s attire and gave a fine farewell to the first new car she bought with her own money. The same car she cringed to admit she had allowed her niece and nephews on occasion to ride in the tiny storage space way in the back on trips to Nebraska. Torch singer. For one of Bruce's decade birthdays, I won't say which decade, she dressed in an evening gown and serenaded him. With a little help from talented friends, she practiced, and then she had speakers set up on her deck. Behind the scenes, before Susan made her appearance, her friends left the mic on, and their conversation left Bruce to fear he was about to be treated to a stripper. It was a priceless moment when Susan appeared, for the record, singing, not stripping. Oktoberfest, brats, sauerkraut, and beer, a wonderful evening on her deck, acknowledging her German roots. Baby showers, wedding showers, family reunions, and celebrations, too many to mention. Travel. Susan enjoyed traveling with Bruce. Her children, her Longmont friends, often trips arranged by Gold Key Travel, and countless other friends and family members. Sometimes on cruises, flying, other times driving. Always experiencing the culture, food, architecture, art, fauna and flora, and antique shopping. I believe her mantra was, try new things. yet embrace the old. Teacher. Susan comes from a long line of family members who are educators, and she was a natural-born teacher of all ages. She laughingly often claimed to have told her sons, "Don't be a teacher or a preacher." During her career, she won numerous awards. She started out teaching Sunday school, worked with special needs students, taught high school and elementary school. Her career included home economics or family and consumer sciences with high school students, kindergarten, first grade reading support, back to high school as a literacy teacher. She worked for both Jefferson County and Cherry Creek school districts. She was always mentoring teachers and was involved in staff development. I was fortunate enough to teach kindergarten with her. And I will never forget when we read Mem Fox's book, Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge. It's a touching intergenerational story of friendship between a child and his elderly neighbor, and the child's attempts to spark the neighbor's faded memories through treasured objects. When we read it to our kindergartners, we would have to take turns reading the pages aloud because our tears would start flowing. Yes, crying is a family trait. I know she had a lasting impact on her students through the heartfelt and funny stories she told. There is no doubt she made a difference in young lives. There's one story about her first year teaching at Wheat Ridge High School. She had an all-boys foods class, culminating in a prepared meal. Each student was invited to bring something to add to the ambiance of the meal. One of her students happened to be a childhood friend of my husband, a perfect example of 6 degrees of separation. This friend decided to bring a nice bottle of wine to share. And Susan promptly told him to put the wine back in his car. We are still friends today, and when we found out he was the student, we always enjoyed reminding Susan of that foods class and that bottle of wine. She always said if she had to do it all over again, she would have confiscated that bottle of wine. It was just a different time. She was a new teacher. We all learned along the way. One of my daughters said, "Aunt Sue taught me so many things. I've learned so much from her." And I think many of us could say the same thing. Learning. Susan never stopped learning. She was interested in the world, stayed up to date on current affairs and politics, listened to NPR, watched PBS, and not just for all the cooking shows and those British TV shows that she adored, but to learn and broaden her horizons. If she came across something of interest in the Denver Post, the radio, a book online, or even a TED Talk, and she thought you would enjoy or often benefit from it, she'd let you know or send it your way. Part of Susan's legacy will be her lessons in humanity. Love, faith, support, compassion, encouragement, kindness, caring, equality, inclusion, empathy, tolerance, creativity, courage, trust, endurance, dignity, loyalty, generosity, gratitude, and honesty. Sometimes she was painfully honest, especially when she told you things you needed to hear but didn't quite want to hear. Her last text to me simply said, "Let your conscience guide you." And if you knew the text that preceded it and the context, you would laugh. She had a quick wit and a fantastic sense of humor. Susan accepted you for who you are, but pushed you to change when needed. She wasn't afraid to stand up for what she valued and believed in. She didn't hold back when it came to her thoughts and opinions. You could always trust her to tell it like it is. Often she would refer to a favorite family saying, and please, for the full effect, excuse my French, or cover your ears, shit or get off the pot. Many years ago, she had a small, tasteful sign posted next to her front doorbell, which said, "Thank you for not smoking in our home." This was way before all the smoking bans in Colorado, but I can't even ever imagine anyone daring to smoke in the Zander's home, including her male cousins who occasionally enjoyed a fine cigar. Susan was a supporter of women's rights, unions, people of color, the LGBT community, the environment, children, the elderly, immigrants, religious freedom, but not the NRA. One time, one of her brothers signed her up for a year's membership to the NRA. She quipped, that he needed help with his letters. Surely he meant the NEA, National Education Association. Before one holiday gathering at her home, she sent an email to remind family members that anyone with permits to carry firearms should leave their guns at home. Not that she was afraid that gunfire would erupt, mind you, but because young children would be present. I bring this up not to start a debate, but to demonstrate that in spite of varying family viewpoints regarding a multitude of subjects, family members were never alienated because of differing beliefs and opinions. Susan's parents, Harold and Velma Coinson, had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. In this order: Karen, Alan, Susan, and Tim. All 4 were very different from one another, but they were so cherished by each other. Their differences never came between their love. That's a lesson worth honoring. I will miss so much about my Aunt Sue. To many of you, she was Susan, but to her nieces and nephews, she was always Aunt Sue. Uncle Bruce is the only person, also the only other person that routinely calls her Sue. We were all so close to her because each of her siblings married young and had children young. Ahead of her time and always in vogue, Susan married and had children in her mid to late 30s. So we had her all to ourselves for many years, and she lavished her attention on us. Sleepovers, cooking lessons, hockey games. She even took one nephew on a bike trip up to Waterton Canyon to go fishing, and she crashed her bike on the way back down. But such fun adventures we had spending time with her. It's hard to cry with glasses, my sympathy. Susan enjoyed telling stories, and she was the captivating storyteller of our family's history. She understood that memories have to be passed down by those who knew us in life, in the stories they tell about us. Life was wonderful with Susan in it, and as heartbroken as we are, our feelings can't possibly compare to those of her kids, David and Heidi, Stephen and Stacy. She was so very proud of all their accomplishments, but mostly she was proud of what good parents they each are. Well, that, and also that her daughter-in-laws are strong, independent women. Included are her much-loved grandchildren, Bryn, Willow, Anna, Wesley, and Drew. They were her rays of sunshine, and she was so delighted by all of them. The bedroom, playroom she had set up for them is so magical. And of course, Bruce, her husband of 40 years. To watch Bruce care for Susan throughout their life together and during her final days was pure love, gentle and tender. It's the little things Bruce did, the thoughtfulness, patience, humor, and creativity. The birthday cake he made for her with 20-something layers. We'll talk about that later. Running out to buy her a chicken wing because that sounded good to eat when nothing else really did. The fresh flowers he always brought her. The time he unveiled a washable heart tattoo with her name. Playing the theme song from Downton Abbey, dancing lessons, the little book necklace he gave her that he wrote in. She once told me the only time she ever saw him really angry was when he was waiting for her and the boys to get in the car so they wouldn't be late for church. Susan would say, and I know many of you have heard it, that Bruce. Simply meaning that extraordinary special person she brought into our lives. That Bruce. Books. Susan loved to read. She had many favorite books and authors. She always had a good book recommendation, and here's another one I think she would approve of. You Learn by Living, 11 Keys for a Fulfilling Life by Eleanor Roosevelt. The title alone reminds me of Susan. It sounds just like a book she could have written. Both of us belong to a book club, Food and Books, and made up of Walnut Hills elementary teachers and staff. We have been meeting monthly in each other's homes since 1990. That's a lot of books. And trust me, we're compiling a list. See me later if you want it. Susan, as you can imagine, always brought such insight to our discussions. You will know us by the buttons we are wearing. I don't know which side mine's on. There it is. Reading is our passion. And yes, we often think the book is better than the movie. One book comes to mind. A book that was also made into a movie, Brokeback Mountain. I think Susan would say it's not about straight love or gay love, but human love. There's a song from that movie sung by an artist Susan liked, Emmylou Harris. The song is A Love That Will Never Grow Old. Part of the lyrics are, lean on me, let our hearts beat in time. Feel the strength in the hands that have held you so long. Who cares where we go on this old rutted road in a world that may say we're wrong? Because I know a love that will never grow old. Susan was all about equality, being able to choose the love of your life. One of the things only you can choose for yourself. You can't choose for your child, for your friends, or for your parents. We all know Bruce was her choice, and she was his. What a love. Thoughtfulness, family, and friends. Susan is one of the people who, when they leave us, they have staying power. She was generous, choosing thoughtful gifts, often for no other reason than seeing something she knew you would like. You might be treated to a book, a scarf, a dinner, a play. She always remembered to bring a hostess gift. When Bruce Springsteen's book came out, she bought it for her brother's kids because she knew her brother was a big fan. When she found out her cousin was diagnosed with breast cancer and was going through treatment too, she sent her a care box full of thoughtful items to help her with her journey. She threw parties for her siblings to celebrate completions of life's challenges. Last year, she gathered some of her prized possessions and family heirlooms and invited her sons, she always said my boys, and their wives, as well as her family and friends, to choose some things. Her only caveat was that it be something they would use. These things are sweet reminders of her. She said it gave her such joy to see what people chose. Susan believed in us, encouraged us, cared for us, and prayed for us. She could be called any time, day or night, to talk, to share life experiences, to laugh with and to cry with. When your life becomes intertwined with Susan's, you are changed. Art, music, and theater. Susan supported artists, musicians, and actors. She had eclectic taste when it came to music, art, and movies, and shows. She was creative herself and had crafting parties, making mosaics, totem and holiday items, chalk painting, furniture, clay artwork. She was always perusing Pinterest for new ideas. I'm going to end with part of the lyrics in the song For Good from the Broadway musical Wicked. In spite of its title, it's a story about understanding and forgiveness. Part of what I'm going to share is included in one of the quotes Susan also chose for the tables you will be sitting at for dinner. The truth is, when I wrote this, I had no idea we would choose to share part of the same quote. I marvel And I'm touched that of all the quotes, we both thought of this one. Must mean she would approve. Or it's just one more blessing from her. For good. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to help those who help us most to grow, if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if that is true, but I know who I am today because I know I am who I am today because I knew you. I think my glasses. This part is a different one. It may well be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now, whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Because I knew you, I have been changed for good. Hold tight to the memories. Tell Susan's story and embrace change for good.
Thank you, Gloria. It's beautiful. It's been written that all you need to know, you've learned in kindergarten. Well, when you have a kindergarten teacher for a mother, your whole life becomes a classroom. Many of you here were fortunate to have been formally taught by Miss Coins or Mrs. Zander. Others had the pleasure to teach alongside her. My uncles Tim and Alan had a nickname for her, Tutor. When I was younger, I thought it was because she taught them a thing or two when they were growing up. I realize now I may have misunderstood. Here are a few things that Mom has taught me. First and foremost, love and support your partner. Mom can only take part of that credit. Dad, you and Mom have been the ultimate example of what a relationship can and should be. Over the last couple of years, as she relied on you more and more for her care, I only saw your love for one another continue to grow. Thank you for being so good for Mom. I love you both. Number 2, work hard and enjoy it. Early on, Mom started working at Gates Rubber Factory with her dad. She worked her way up from the warehouse to the factory line and then to the office. She saved up enough money to go to college at the age of 27, earned a master's in teaching, and was soon awarded Colorado Home Economics Teacher of the Year in 1979. While teaching at Creek, she also taught child development. As part of her curriculum, she would bring me and Stephen into the classroom like some kind of baby zoo animals. All to the amusement of the high schoolers. When I was old enough to go to Bellevue Elementary next door, I'd show up to Creek with her in the morning, hang out in her office with the other teachers, and then walk the halls by myself on my way over to school. The high schoolers would say, "Hey, check out the new freshman." While raising 2 young kids, she went back for another degree, this time in early childhood education, to be an amazing kindergarten teacher. Eventually, she would return to high school to continue to teach reading. She never stood still and always worked with a smile. Number 3, have your own style. Oh boy, the hairstyles. Pay attention to these photos you're going to see later today. Hair that's long and wavy, half up, bobbed, permed up, cut short. There was this bell-shaped thing that must have been really in style. When her cancer treatment took her hair away, she proudly wore it bald, but occasionally wore some fancy hats with her granddaughters. If we're talking about her style, of course we have to talk about the 1968 VW. What a car. Just as Lori said, though, I believe it could fit more nieces and nephews than there were seatbelts. It had no problem making trips to Nebraska and back. but eventually that car ended up pretty rusty. So did the Stampeder sticker on the back. During the winter, snow would splash up through the floorboards, but anytime it broke down, Dad was always able to get it going again. I'm proud to say that nearly 30 years after Mom bought it, that I learned to drive stick on that bug. In the end, the whole family came together for a hippie-themed wake, like Lori mentioned, and she finally sold it for a cool $500. Number 4. Stand up for what you believe. While working at Gates, she walked the picket line alongside Grandpa. They took a hit financially from the strike, but they knew it was the right thing to do, as it would improve the lives of future Gates employees. In church, I like singing hymns with her, like Lift High the Cross, though she could never get the words out at funerals, which is why we have Brenda singing today. Thank you so much. Her fingers would tap out each word as we sang them, much like a bouncy ball, teaching us to read at any opportunity. With time, however, I began to fear the Holy Trinity. Fear that it would be mentioned in the last verse. Like a good Lutheran, she would stand up, even though no one else in the church would. But unlike most Lutherans, we sat in the front pew rather than the back, so Another time in the same church, I remember her becoming abruptly angered by something that was said during the sermon. She simply stood up, looked the pastor in the eye, and walked right out. She didn't return for the rest of the service. I don't know at that particular time what the pastor had said, or more likely, I was just not paying attention. But I'm sure it was something contrary to her convictions in equality. Equality between men and women, or the quality of who we choose to love, regardless if it's between a man and a woman, or two people of the same gender. Number 5, you're never too old to learn from a children's book. Some people are connoisseurs of art, maybe fine wines. For Mom, it was children's books. We'd get one for any occasion well into adulthood. Right now, my house is full of them, many of which have stamps or library checkout cards from her days at Willow Creek Elementary, where she would bring her own books in to teach her students. Many of her favorite authors are now my favorites for my girls. Mem Fox, Kualalu, I do love. Robert Munch, Love You Forever. Man, good luck ever reading that one without crying. Much better when he just tells a story in an audiobook instead. One of her other favorite authors was Patricia Polacco, and one of her books, Bun, Bun, Bun. Grandmother Darling in the book was very much like what Mom wanted to be as a grandmother, and I imagine much like Grandma Bowling was for her. Granddaughter Darling comes over regularly in the story. They make sand cookies together, drink mint tea, and then cuddle in a big blue chair while they read books. Even the illustrations are full of beautiful gardens surrounding the house, much like Mom's. As dystonia gradually took away Mom's mobility, and then cancer took away her energy, she found it progressively more difficult to be the grandmother she wanted to be. With one exception. Much like in the book, Mom had her own big chair. This one red instead of blue. And the grandkids would pile into the chair with her, read books, and soak in the love, as it's described in the book. Mom once told me that you get a great glimpse of someone's future when you get to know them as a kindergartner. When her cancer returned, one thing that broke her heart, more than having to say goodbye to her family and her friends, as incredibly difficult as that would be, was not having the chance to know her grandchildren as kindergartners. It was then such a blessing that she outlived her prognosis just long enough to see her eldest grandchild, Brandon, completely through her kindergarten year. Number 6, family is everything. But if you're going to get everybody together in the same place and at the same time, you're gonna have to feed them. Oh, and what a hostess. Buttered rolls, roast beef, rib roast, green beans wrapped in bacon, goulash, prime rib, chicken somehow baked inside of bread, runzas, not those cheap knockoffs that you get on I-80 between here and Omaha. These are the real deal. She taught me to sprinkle a little sugar on slices of tomatoes, and her fried chicken was second only to Grandma Coinson's. Mom's recipes were inspired by childhood summers spent on the farm with her grandma and grandpa Bowling, where her favorite meals were freshly harvested fried chicken, sliced cucumbers and vinegar, early field corn on the cob, freshly baked bread, and apricot pie. Number 7, how to say goodbye. I call it the coins and goodbye, but it just as well could be the Bowling goodbye or the Zander goodbye. You'd be at family parties saying goodbye to someone, turn around an hour later and they're still right there next to you. The majority of the time spent at Mom and Dad's parties was either in the kitchen or in the front hallway with one hand on the doorknob and never leaving. And that's how she left this world. Knowing that she was going to die and that the party was almost over, she kept one hand on the doorknob but continued to visit with her family and friends up until it was absolutely too late to stay any longer. I'd like to say thanks to everyone that took time to visit, call, write, or just simply send good thoughts to Mom as her health declined over the last year. Number 8. She taught me how to die. In med school, my training focused on diagnosis and treatment, but rarely death. Then in my intern year, I practiced at a hospital in Wisconsin that had a very robust advanced directive program. Every time I admitted someone to the hospital, regardless of how sick they were, I was required to have a conversation about end-of-life care. Inspired by this, Mom and Dad drafted living wills, and Mom insisted on having conversations about what type of care she would want as her death approached. When that time eventually came, there was no worrying about what Mom would have wanted, and if that aligned with what we wanted. No second guessing of medical decisions, no distractions, because Mom had worked everything out. We were simply able to surround her with our love. That was one last gift from her to us. In fact, many of her actions over the last couple of years, like the jewelry and household item giveaways, were intentional to take care of us, even though she was the one that was sick. The perpetual hostess, even much of this party today, was actually planned by her. On behalf of Mom, as one last teaching moment, I encourage all of you to have similar conversations with your loved ones now while you're healthy. Talk about difficult things like breathing tubes, feeding tubes, CPR, surgery. What if it happens tomorrow? What if you have terminal cancer or have advanced Alzheimer's? There's no right or wrong answer. It's the discussion that matters. We can't plan how we leave this world, but we can make these decisions up front in the hope that, much like Mom, we can take one more lap through this amazing party with all of our friends and loved ones before we have to head out the door. Thank you.
No, way left here is now just a second. So, Margot and I got together yesterday to compare notes on our what we're going to say today, and sure enough, we both came up with lists of lessons. Lesson number 1: funerals are for the living, not the dead. This is something my mom strongly believes. We truly aren't here for Susan. In fact, she's the only person who isn't here right now. This celebration is for us. We need this to process her absence and celebrate her life. I know that this is a lesson that she taught us because so many of you visited, called, reached out, and spent time with my mom while she was living. I cannot believe the outpouring of love, time, and admiration I witnessed during Mom's last couple years on Earth. I've never seen this amount of processing and closure prior to death. In fact, my mom told us the last 2 months of her life were the closest she's ever felt to her friends and family. As many of you know, for my mom's benefit, my dad ran a pretty tight ship around the house and was limiting the visits to less than 10 minutes near the end of her life because she simply didn't have the energy for it anymore. Many of you spent hours on the road and some even flew across the country simply for the privilege of spending these last few precious living minutes with her. These actions from you all were the true testament to the role she played in all of our lives. We all visited her because we knew she would do the same for us, and we cherished every last living drop from her. I'm reminded of the decades she spent visiting my grandfather at Shalom nursing home during his decline. My mom would religiously visit him on a regular basis. Most of the time, he had no idea who she was, but she visited nonetheless. Lesson number 2, stand up for what you believe in and set an example. As many of you know, the reason my grandparents left Nebraska was because my grandpa was an alcoholic. His doctor prescribed him a relocation away from his drinking habits. He relocated to Denver to build a new life away from his alcoholism. My mom once told my grandpa that if she ever saw him drinking around his grandchildren, she would pack us up and leave the party. It's no wonder I never saw my grandpa drink a sip of alcohol. Fast forward to late 80s, my brother and I were in elementary school. We were all together for a family event. My grandpa wasn't there, but it was clear that some of the family had been drinking a little too much. Sure enough, my mom packed us up and we left. It takes a lot to stand up in front of family and set an example. In fact, it wasn't until high school that I saw my mom take a sip of alcohol. It was a glass of wine that was paired as a part of the meal. Its purpose was gastronomy, not inebriation. Stand up for what you believe in and set an example. My mom was a firm believer in women's rights. She was proud of the time in 1970. In 1970, she marched for women's rights. In 2017, she was in no shape to march and could hardly walk at the time. But you better believe she was out there marching with the women for women's rights. And yes, for those of you that are wondering, she was wearing a pussy hat. That brings us to lesson number 3. Teach your kids everything. And I mean everything. For those of you that don't know, my brother and I were taught about sex ed well before our peers in elementary school. I distinctly remember some post-it note sketches in the kitchen when I was in 2nd grade. Anytime my brother and I had odd holidays while she was still teaching, my mom would bring us to school with her to watch movies. No, not Disney movies, but sex ed movies. What better way to spend your days off from school? My mom even stocked a library full of educational books in the basement, just in case we had some questions that were left unanswered. Yet, despite all this education, somehow my brother ended up with not 2, but 3 daughters. I guess not every student listens to the teacher. We love you, baby drill. Lesson number 4. If you ever find yourself behind schedule, simply catch up. By the time my mom hit her 30s, she was officially considered an old maid. She was written off as a kernel that would never pop and was destined to live her life alone and without a mate. That's when she met my dad. He was 7 years younger than her and quite the catch. It took my dad exactly 2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks, to propose to her. She of course said yes. They were pregnant with David within a year of getting married. 5 months after giving birth to my brother, my mom was pregnant with me. And that is how you catch up. She definitely read the books and paid attention to the lesson. Speaking of books, lesson number 5. Always read to your children and surround yourself with books. Every Christmas and every Easter, my brother and I would wake up early, rush down the stairs to find our Christmas presents and Easter baskets. The centerpiece of all the gifts, candy, stocking stuffers was always a Christmas or Easter book. That's 38 years of books, times 2 holidays, times 2 boys. That's almost 160 books. And those are just the holiday books. Not to mention the special occasion and personalized autographed birthday books from all of the amazing children's authors my mom would visit. Michelle Silverstein, Robert Mensch, Eric Carle, to name a few. As you look through the slideshow after the service, take an inventory of how many photos there are of my mom leading to kids, grandkids, nieces, and nephews. It was far and above one of her favorite things to do. Lesson number 6. Entertain your kids better than technology can. My brother and I were the first kids on the block to have a Nintendo Entertainment System. We honestly couldn't care less. We didn't know what to do with the thing. It may have had something to do with the black and white TV it was good. But most likely it was because my mom was just better at entertaining. We had gardens to tend to, pools to swim in, zoos to visit, books to read, bikes to ride, food to cook, and a mother there to show us how to do it all. Speaking of food to cook, lesson number 7. People who give you their food give you their heart. This is a quote from Cesar Chavez, but nobody exemplified it quite like my mother. My mom was famous for her 5-restaurant parties she would host during the winter. The guests of these parties, almost everybody in this room, would arrive at my parents' house and be greeted by somebody playing maitre d', typically it was me and my brother or my dad. You would choose a restaurant that you would like to dine at for the evening and find your place at the table. The first to arrive would smartly choose a seat in the dining room restaurant, close to the kitchen where they would eat with silver, fine china, and would have an extravagant multi-course meal. The last to arrive would typically end up at the shrimp boil, which meant you sat on the floor, ate off a newspaper, and had the best corn on the cob, boiled potatoes, and shrimp of your life. Not a bad punishment for showing up late to a party. My mom has taught a lot of us to cook. When my mom met my dad, he was surviving off of green beans and canned soup. By the time my brother and I were in middle school, my dad was cooking us exotic Asian cuisine from scratch, thanks to Susan. More than one of my cousins had Aunt Sue as a home economics teacher at Cherry Creek High School, and I know she has taught many of you how to make her famous rolls. Lesson number 8, let your child express themselves no matter how bad the expression may be. It was my sophomore year of high school. Zach De La Roca from the band Rage Against the Machine had dreadlocks, and I thought, yeah, I too could be that cool. It was nobody other than my very own mother that drove me to the hip and cool hairdresser near Cheeseman Park to get my hair all did up in dreadlocks, just like Zach. My mom always told me, you can do whatever you want to your hair, just know that people may treat you differently based upon your appearance. Much to my despair, people did not suddenly start treating me like a famous rock star. It couldn't have been more than a few months before it was again my very own mother driving me over to Velma's hair studio to get my head shaved and the dreadlocks removed. Lesson number 9. Challenge yourself. When my Uncle Alan died, my mom committed to doing something every year that challenged herself, and she would do it in his memory. No, she never bought a Harley Davidson, but she did run the Boulder 3 times, ran the P.F. Chang's half marathon in Arizona, and ran the Omaha half marathon. Sure, she crossed the finish line in the same time as the full marathon runners, but that was her challenge. It was never a selfish pursuit either. She would always train with her friends and family. And when it came time for the event, she would always be on the starting line with somebody else. My Christmas present from her one year was to run the P.F. Chang's half marathon in Arizona. It was an amazing bonding experience that not many people get the opportunity to have with their mother. Lesson number 10, listen to music. Nearly every song you hear tonight was selected by my mom. They all hold a special place in her heart. My brother and I grew up surrounded by music. There was always music playing on in the stereo, the car, and at parties. The cooler in our 1988 minivan was never filled with cold beverages, but rather full of cassette tapes from James Taylor, Bette Midler, Tony Bennett, Everly Brothers, and all the greats. Listen to music, but make sure the lyrics are good lyrics. I was 9 years old when Vanilla Ice released his album. I saved up all my pennies to buy the album. After purchasing the album, I rushed upstairs, jammed the tape in my Fisher-Price cassette tape player, hit the play button. In walks my mom and asks to see the album. This was back in the day when the artist would actually print the lyrics in the pamphlet that came with the album. She didn't even make it through the first page before the stop button was pressed, the cassette tape ejected, and To the Extreme was promptly thrown in the trash. The lyrics were demeaning towards women. Please refer back to lesson number 2. Stand up for what you believe in. One of my mom's favorite artists was Patsy Cline. We would listen to her on repeat during most trips to Nebraska. Patsy typically didn't write her own lyrics, but every time she sang, you definitely felt the lyrics. One of my mom's favorite songs from Patsy was If I Could See the World. Here's the first verse. If I could see the world through the eyes of a child, what a wonderful world this would be. There would be no trouble and no strife, just a big, happy life with a bluebird in every tree. This brings me to my mom's next lesson. Always spend time playing with the children in your life. Just like the photos of my mom reading books to kids, the photos of her playing with children are plentiful. She absolutely loved kids and loved spending time playing with them and teaching them about the world. My mom loved being a mom. She lived, breathed, and studied being a mom. She spent her entire career teaching mom stuff. Home economics, relationships and marriage, child development, kindergarten, first grade, and reading. The greatest tragedy in the true sense of the word is that my mom never got the chance to be a grandmother the way that she wanted to. She never got to adventure with her grandkids the way that she did with me and my brother. She never got the chance to write a cookbook like she did with me, and she never got to watch her grandkids graduate from kindergarten. But she did one hell of a job teaching me and my brother how to pick up where she left off. With that said, my mom never anticipated that this life lesson would encourage her 36-year-old son and his family to move back in with her. Imagine your full-grown son, his wife, their 2-year-old toddler, and a newborn baby moving into your basement for a year. To most parents, it sounds like a nightmare, but I suspect it was my mom's dream come true. Not once did she complain or ask for space, quite the contrary. She made us feel genuinely welcome, showered us with more food than we could possibly ever eat, and interacted with our kids every single day. Since my mom's terminal diagnosis, Wesley had spent every Tuesday over at Grammy and Papa's house. Even when my mom was too ill to play with Wesley or push him around in her walker, she made sure to have him climb up on her lap and read him books or just sit quietly. All of his toys were stored right next to her chair so that she could remain a part of his playtime. He was always excited to show Grammy the new tricks he learned with his cars and trucks. I know this time with Grammy had a big impact on his young life. Always spend time playing with the children in your life. And this means babies too. Lesson number 12, take time to hold a baby. Every single one of you that is blood related and younger than my mom was held by my mom when you were a baby. Think about that. That's pretty remarkable. At family gatherings, she would constantly go out of the way to hold the baby in the room. My mom was always seemed to be holding baby. When my mom passed, baby Drew was in the room giggling, cooing, and being a perfect little baby. I have no doubt that Drew's sounds and presence was one of the biggest comforts to her during her last breath. Thank you, baby Drew. Lesson number 13. Don't drop the baby you are holding. It was my dad that dropped one of us. My parents always argued which child was dropped. My dad says it was me, my mom says it was David. We all know that it was clearly not the radiologist that was dropped. But I thank my mom for always having my back and never letting me feel like the child that was dropped. Lesson number 14, never rush a goodbye. As my brother mentioned, at a minimum, it takes 45 minutes for acquaintances to say goodbye at a party. My mom's final goodbye was no exception. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer in October of 2017. It was a rare cancer and came with as little as 3 months to live. I remember when she was telling us the diagnosis, she included the grandchildren calculations. If she lived another 3 months and saw her grandkids every other week, she would only get to see them another 6 times. This was quite simply not enough. Many people have told me she lived 18 months instead of 3 because she was strong. She went to battle. She was a fighter. But my mom always thought differently about cancer. Wars, battles, and fights don't cure cancer. Educated doctors, smart people, research, and good treatments cure cancer. That's exactly what she found at University of Colorado Med Center. She was the last remaining patient in her immunotherapy trial that undoubtedly extended her life. She was 100% a teacher through and through. Even after she died, she literally continued to teach. My mom donated her body to the University of Colorado Medical Center for research, where students could continue to study her body, and her cancer. It was a final act of gratitude that only a teacher could make. Never rush the goodbye. My mom waited a long time for her last goodbye. She waited until she saw her 40th wedding anniversary with my dad. She waited until all of her grandchildren were born. Once she was on her deathbed, she continued to wait. She waited until she had spoken to each one of her dearest friends. There truly wasn't a single thing she left open-ended in her life. Heck, she even waited until my brother had the rare weekday off of work. She waited until I was working from Denver, and she waited until we all had childcare. She waited for me, Stacy, David, Heidi, my dad, and the sweet sounds of baby Drew to fill the room before she took her last breath. Her final goodbye was exactly as she planned. And finally, lesson number 15. It's a lesson from kindergarten. Remember to use plenty of glue. My mom was the glue in so many of our lives that kept us together. Her house was often the place where the party happened. Her recipes were often the ones people used. And she was often the reason it took the Coinsons 45 minutes to leave the party. Luckily, when bringing us all together, she used plenty of glue and created a bond that will last a very, very long time. One of my last gifts to her friends was Michael Bublé tickets for her and the girls to go out in the town. My dad will be the reluctant fill-in as one of the girls for Michael's upcoming concert at the Pepsi Center. Her glue will keep the friends together. Before she died, my mom made sure that the family Christmas parties were planned for the next 3 years. She used plenty of glue. Not sure what you all are up to in 2021, but Brian and Julie are hosting Christmas. Her glue will keep the family together. We love you, Mom. Thank you for the many, many life lessons.
It's not often at this point that the only word that comes to my mind is wow. What an extraordinary woman, life, mom, teacher. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Susan K. Zander was born on November 10, 1944, to Harold and Velma Coinson in Deschler, Nebraska. She passed away surrounded by the love of her family on June 4, 2019. Susan worked at the Gates Rubber Company a number of years before entering college to eventually get advanced degrees in home economics and education. This led to her life as a dedicated teacher. She was recognized for her excellence in teaching and loved by her students. She married Bruce Zander on November 4th, 1978. Her family and friends meant the world to her. She brought life and energy to every relationship, whether it was with family, friends, or in the classroom. Susan is survived by her husband, Bruce, and 2 sons, David with Heidi and Stephen with Stacy, a brother, Tim, with Dee, and 5 grandchildren, Bryn, Willow, Emma, Wesley, and Drew. Preceded include her parents, Harold and Velma, her sister, Karen, and her brother, Alan. Importantly, in lieu of flowers, Susan requested that donations be sent to the Denver Hospice, the Alzheimer's Association, or the American Civil Liberties Association. I want to thank you for including me in today. It was a touching experience, though too brief, to know Susan and to meet Bruce and now the rest of your family and your friends. I hope you all continue to enjoy this day in memory of Susan. I hope you tell stories today about each other's lives, how she touched your lives, how she influenced each of you, and how tomorrow you will choose to carry Susan with you in thought, in word, and importantly, in action. Now, of course, there's going to be food. While they're setting up this room, we ask you to please go back into the room that you first came into to give the caterers an opportunity to set things up in here for your later pleasure. And please, please, please enjoy the video that many of you will see yourselves in. Maybe have a prayer. Heavenly compassion, grace, joy, and deeper life than we ever know in our physical time. We come to you with that greatest of all prayers as we say thank you. Thank you for Susan, for her influence on those she knew, for the strength of character, for the will, for the courage,